Are you ready to take your beginner crocheted amigurumi projects from looking like this to looking like this? Today I'm going to share some easy ways to elevate your beginner crochet amigurumi projects to help them look their best and make your cute amigurumi look even cuter. Let's go! One thing that can keep your projects from looking their best is their pointy heads. I see this a lot, unfortunately. Every time I see this, I think of the movie Coneheads, and we do not want this conehead look. Let's look at my two bunnies here. First of all, it may be hard to tell, but I made these using the same pattern. It's the Rose and Lily bunny pattern, which I have linked below. And you can see this one has the dreaded pointy head. This happens a lot when you use thicker yarn. One way to prevent this is by using a larger crochet hook size, but that causes other issues, and if you watched my last video, you know we don't want to do that. Here's how I've been avoiding this pointy head issue, and that is to add stitches to your magic ring. Most patterns are written to start with a magic ring of 6 single crochet. However, I have found that starting with a magic ring of 8 single crochet prevents this awful hump on the top of the head. You can do this with most patterns by changing your first few rounds as follows. Instead of doing the traditional 6 single crochet magic ring, where you start with single crochet and gradually increase each round as you see here, you could do the modified 8 single crochet magic ring instead, which is round 1 of 8 single crochet, round 2 of 8 increases, round 3 of single crochet and then increase. You'll skip round 4, and then round 5 is 3 single crochet and increase. By doing this, you will take your project from a conehead to no conehead. And don't worry, skipping that 4th round isn't going to affect our pattern. Here's a side-by-side of the 6 single crochet version and the 8 single crochet version. They are very close in size, and in my experience hasn't affected the look of my finished projects. The next thing you can do to elevate your crochet animal projects is properly stuffing them. Now I know stuffing your amigurumi is not the most exciting part of the process, but it's a very important one. I think for many of us, especially for me when I first started, polyfill is more of an afterthought, but it really shouldn't be. Having the proper stuffing technique is like having the proper framing in a house. It helps keep the intended structure and shape of your crochet plushie. Pattern designers use increases and decreases at certain points of a pattern to intentionally change the shape of the item. So by not stuffing the item properly, you're not achieving the item's full potential. So you want to remember 2 things. You want to stuff your crochet plushie properly and firmly. By properly, I mean avoid grabbing large amounts and just throwing them in there. Instead, as you are stuffing your project, push the stuffing out to the sides. You'll see a gap develop in the center. You want to fill the center that's created with more stuffing and repeat the process, pushing the stuffing out to the side and down, filling it more as you go. Every once in a while, stop and check the shape and check to see if there are any areas that seem to be lacking in stuffing. I would also recommend you stuff your toy pretty firmly. It guarantees you get the intended shape of the plushie, and since you're likely making your item for a young child, these items will be well loved and the stuffing over time will naturally deflate, so don't be shy with stuffing. Now, my next few tips are things I tend to do even when following someone else's amigurumi pattern. Many times I see patterns as a good starting point to give me all the parts I need. Then I feel I have the freedom to be creative and modify it how I want and put my own touch on it. There's no amigurumi police out there telling you you have to do it exactly as the designer did. However, if you're sharing pictures on social media of your crochet projects from a pattern that you modified, you still want to credit the original designer for the pattern. And most importantly, you cannot call that modified version your own pattern and try to sell it. Another thing I've been doing lately to elevate my crochet amigurumi is changing up things during the assembly. I have seen some super cute amigurumi bunnies that had the ears lowered and turned down and thought it gave the plushie so much extra character. So it was easy to do with the pattern by simply attaching them this way instead. So the next way to elevate your amigurumi project is the eye placement. So let's take another look at these two bunnies. Now on this one, I put the safety eyes as shown in the tutorial, which isn't bad at all. However, what I tend to do instead on my crochet animals is I skip adding the eyes until I've either finished the head or more often when I've completed the entire project. So yes, that means I don't clip in the safety eyes anymore as I'm working through the pattern. I finish the item, then try out a few different eye placements after I've assembled my crochet plushie, and then just hot glue them in exactly where I want them. I questioned this at first, but here's why I've settled on this method. Safety eyes, even when attached the normal way, are still not considered safe. So regardless of how they're attached, anytime you sell an item with these eyes, you should be letting the buyer know they are not intended for children under age 3, because they may still come loose. But because I also want to provide items for young ones under the age of 3, I also make items that don't have plastic eyes. I make them with sleepy eyes, or I have also crocheted circles for eyes, so my customers have items they can purchase without the concerns of these safety eyes. The next way to elevate your crochet animals is by adding a little bit of face shaping. Let's take a look again at my two bunnies. So this one I left the round face as the pattern did, and there's nothing wrong with it. Again, it's very common for amigurumi to have this simple shape. This one though, I have shaped the face by pulling in the eyes just a little, which also helped the nose area stick out. A very common trait for a little bunny. This is how I do this. For this one, I would grab about a foot of yarn and insert the needle at the lower back of the head and work my way over to just below the eye. I will reinsert the needle one stitch over and work the needle back to the lower back of the head where I started. And I will repeat those same steps for the other eye. And then I will pull each of the strings to pull in the eyes. Each eye should have 2 strings until I have the face shape that I like. Once I have it the way I want, I will tie off each of the strings and just double checking to make sure it's still how I want it. And then I will just weave in the ends. A couple extra things I did to elevate this bunny is I added a couple extra simple face details. For the eyes, I added a single stitch of black and white, which gives the eyes a slightly more realistic look. For the eyebrows, I just added a single stitch above the eye. Just be careful with these because a slight change in the angle can take your amigurumi from sweet to angry. And for the nose, I've been liking to add these little heart-shaped noses lately instead of the straight lines. Here's how I do that. I will first find the center of the eyes, and starting one round below the eyes is where the base of my nose will start. Then I will reinsert the needle in that same base point and then exit one stitch up and over. Now I won't pull the yarn all the way through. I'll leave a small loop like this, and then I will insert the needle through that hoop and place the loop upwards. Then I will reinsert the needle in that top stitch back out of the bottom stitch where I started, which will set this loop in place. Then I will repeat the same steps for the other side, making sure they're evenly spaced between the eyes. I tied this off and weaved in the ends off camera. Now I'm just placing a small little stitch using medium weight yarn to complete the nose. So even as a beginner, you can make these simple changes and really elevate the look of your crochet amigurumi. Now one last difference has to do with the crochet hook that I use. If you watched my last video, you know what that is. If you haven't, click here to watch that and find out.